breaking down all the biggest games in our area. This is Sports Talk with Kendrick and Dusty on Wave Now. Delivered by Bearno's Pizza. Yeah, it's that good.
Look at that. Us all snazzy with our open.
It looks beautiful, honestly. We finally have all the pieces here together.
Yeah, it's week 2 of it. Welcome to Kendrick and Dusty Talk Sports. We're back for another week. It's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy 7 days since last time we saw each other.
We've been running around, man. We've been running a lot. Kendrick was just telling me today, it's weird. It's nice having Wednesdays off because you've been working the weirdest schedule. Like you'll come in on Saturdays, and Kendrick's everywhere, man. Kendrick does everything. So
this will be my first weekend where I don't have to come in on one of the days.
That's kind of amazing, actually. It's well deserved. So you've got some rest hopefully ahead, but not before this week, man. Not before Friday night because Friday's got everything coming up.
We got our touchdown Friday night game of the week is the annual battle for the Shillelagh. St. X versus Trinity. St. X has won this game 2 years in a row. The Rocks looking to get out tonight. It's been an up and down season for Trinity. They came out like gangbusters when they blew out Bryan Station, but then they kind of stumbled and they looked like they was kind of getting things back together. Then they took that loss to Mail, which they were down big. They did fight back, but then they still ended up losing by double digits. But this is going to be your first experience of the game. Well, your live shots.
Yeah.
And it's fair. But it's a great game. It'll be a packed house out there at L&N Stadium. And like I said, St. X and Trinity, they get after it every year.
There's something so special about high school teams being able to play in a college stadium, and obviously having a D1 school right down the road makes it that much more special. It's a beautiful facility, and to have these two teams, obviously this isn't the first time, but to be able to go together and play in this kind of matchup. And, we saw the pageantry earlier today, of course. You had the luncheon earlier today as well. And to be able to see both schools coming together, that was really special. It is definitely, especially for somebody like myself that's seen this for the first time, something is beyond just the game here. And I think that's what's so cool about it. And to see the passion on both sides, I think that's what makes this special. Of course, you have a top 5 matchup here. Right. You have the number 1 team in St. X and the number 5 team in Trinity. So it should be a good one.
And congratulations to the Catholic Education Foundation. They raised a record $600,000 today for Catholic Education Foundation out there. I was on the radio earlier with Tony Vanetti. He was talking about that a little bit. He's been hosting it the last couple of years. But as for the game itself, both teams are coming in off of losses. St. X took their first loss of the season last week against a team from Cincinnati. Wasn't Moeller? Cincinnati Elder. Yep. So that was their first loss of the season. But they've looked complete most of the year. They've held Mail to just 10 points when they beat Mail. They're the only team that's beaten Mail so far this year. Trevor Havel has looked much improved this season. This is one of my favorite highlights of the year.
This is unbelievable.
Unbelievable catch and throw right there. St. X has looked good. Like I said earlier, Trinity's been kind of up and down. So, it's going to be one of those games, though, where you have to throw it. And, it's cliche. You say throw out the records, but this is a game where you truly can do that.
Yeah, Trinity is 2-3 on the season. You talk about two teams kind of coming off somewhat recent performances, of course, so we can only identify what they've done last week and the previous couple. But Trinity, a huge win this past week. And meanwhile, you have St. X that struggled against Elder. So 2-3 versus 3-1. I think something that is intriguing to me about Trinity is they have a really good rushing attack. You see right there, that's Clint Sansbury taking the carry. He's been a Player of the Week nominee a couple times. The thing that I watched with St. X, and a lot of people want to, hand them the game here immediately. Number 1 team, obviously they'll look at the rankings, but St. X did struggle against the rush specifically against Elder, and that's kind of the same build that Trinity has. They've got some momentum moving forward here as well. Curious to see what actually, obviously the offensive output, you don't know if you're going to get the same that you got against Carmel, but Carmel was supposed to be pretty good going into that match.
Carmel's a good team. So, Zane Johnson is a freshman quarterback for Trinity. It's funny when I was out there with Coach Cobb the other day. He's literally said, with all the distractions, it's easy to do when you have an experienced bunch.
Right.
And I looked at him and said, well, your quarterback's a freshman.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, thanks for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
But obviously Zane he's been up and down as a freshman, as you would expect, but he's grown up really fast, and he's playing very well considering the spotlight that he's in as a freshman, playing for Trinity, playing a quarterback position for a tradition-laden school. And so you've got to be appreciative of what he's been able to do so far.
Yeah, and to watch his growth even in the past couple of weeks. I mean, like I mentioned, against Carmel right there, you saw the kind of the light switch turned on, right? And you mentioned that Coach Cobb was talking about the distractions. Here's exactly what he did have to say about leading into this week, what that looks like for them.
Starting with Frederick Douglass, good football team, and then rolling from Center Grove, great football team, top 30, really good. And then Carmel, good football team, and then Male, tough place to play over there. It always has been for us. We never seemed to play well over there. We didn't, and they did. And again, we didn't take care of our business, and got another big one this week with all the distractions, all the things that are going on. And as a player and a coach, you got to kind of put those things out. You got to put the noise away, and you got to concentrate on your business.
It's crazy to me how difficult, as you mentioned, the schedule has been for them. I mean, coming off that game against Mayo, that is, you're talking about one of the best teams as well in the area. And quite frankly, they were going toe-to-toe. It was a couple defensive plays that turned this thing around. You look the week before at Carmel, and it's dominant. So, I mean, now you have arguably their toughest test of the year. You have St. X that beat Mayo, and the whole progression of it, right? So he knows what they're up against, and I think that that can humble you a little bit too, but it can give you a sense of reality going into these kind of matchups.
Yeah, with Trinity, it's always you can't never go by their record because they play such a national schedule, and so I kind of equate them with, on a smaller scale with Central. Central, I think, has only got one win this season, but nobody wants to face Central at the end of the season in 3A because they play such a hard schedule. Trinity the same way. They play up. They play Ohio teams. They play teams from Texas. They play teams from Indiana, and they play Indianapolis teams every year. So you can't really gauge it by their record, but they are going against a St. X team. Like I said, they can run the ball, they can throw the ball. They're stout on defense. Coach Wallace has been amazing since he's taken over that St. X program.
Yeah, needless to say, this could be quite the storyline for Coach Wallace this week because he has 349 career wins. I did have the chance to ask him, and you kind of know what the response is going to be here, but I did ask him, would a win this week against Trinity for 350? Well, I mean, what is your mindset there? And this is what he had to say.
I don't really think about it because it took me a while to get 300. I was sitting on 299, I think, for 2 or 3 games. So I just soon not lose a bunch and roll thinking about a number. This is more about our guys getting ready to play a huge in-city rivalry with a lot of guys that they've known, probably went to grade school with, all that kind of stuff. It's a neat event. I mean, it's why you come to St. X Trinity. You play in that kind of atmosphere, in that kind of game.
Yeah, no shock that he basically said, whatever to 350. He's had so many wins, it probably doesn't. It means something to him, but he's going to make it about the kids because at the end of the day, that is what this is about.
I mean, you talk about two of the better characters in high school football right there between Coach Cobb and Coach Wallace. They're great guys. They're funny. They're joking the whole time. We can't even show like half the joking stuff that they do. It's not that it's like in language or anything. It just doesn't fit into what we're talking about on a daily basis. But they're great when we go out there. They always joke. They always got something funny to say when we go out there, and they're just great guys. So you look forward to a great game. You want both of them to be successful because, like I said, they're so good to us. They're so good in the community.
You've seen a lot of these games, Kendrick. Is there, one in your eyes or maybe a moment from any of these matchups that you've seen that kind of sticks out?
Well, the thing is like there's been plenty of times when one or the other is like a favorite, like a major favorite, and you think it's going to be, and the games will be close.
Yeah.
Games are rarely really high scoring. They're always defensive battles because, I mean, these guys, they've grown up together. A lot of them, they've known each other since Pee Wee football. So that's the thing that always amazes me about that. There's rarely like a blowout in the game, and there's very rarely a shootout. I can't remember a shootout between these two. So that's really what stands out. And then just how many people show up, because the game is so big. Because the crazy thing is they always end up beating the playoffs, and they still play in Ellen Stadium. Right. They don't need to do that. But because the playoff game is not nearly as highly attended as the regular season game, mainly because people come from out of town for this game, and so they can plan it. You can't really plan it for the playoffs. But I mean, as I said, the camaraderie, because even like these two are bitter rivals. They're all friends. There's rarely a fight in the game, and it's just always just a well played game.
I wish I could say the same about my hometown, Valencia versus West Ranch. Shout out to them, because that is not how any of this goes out there. I will say Kentucky football does it better, and so I'm excited to be able to see some of this in the pageantry that comes behind it, because honestly, that is what this is. Like from a West Coast perspective, granted, I have seen Texas high school football, so you see some of that out there, but you don't really see pageantry like this outside of the Rose Bowl, right? Like you really don't. Like there is really one day a year, whether it's NFL or college football or high school, that matters for football in California, and that is January the 1st for the Rose Bowl. Out here, it is amazing. It's amazing to watch the pageantry. And this week leading up to this game, I mean, I haven't seen anything really like this since at least in my time in Texas. So it's really special to be a part of this.
Right, and like, there's been times we've covered the pep rallies before. Yeah. Probably won't tomorrow, but we've covered the pep rallies before. I mean, that's how big this game is. And so it's like I said, it's one that the whole community gets behind, even though the other schools will say, no, we don't care about that game.
Right.
They'll be watching the news.
They'll be watching
on Friday night to see who won. We'll be on the sidelines of games, and like a coach or the guys covering the yardsticks or a referee, somebody will come up and ask us during the game while we're at other games, what's the score of the St. X Trinity game? It happens every time. So we're used to that. And put a bow on high school football and touchdown Friday night. We also have a big game over at Christian Academy. Their whole big thing coming into the season is we're stepping up their schedule, and they definitely did that. Manual coming into Christian Academy. Manual, one of the surprise teams of the year. They're undefeated, which is not really that surprising because they brought back a talented bunch. But when you think about everything they went through right before the season started with their head coach, have an interim coach in there who's doing a great job, to see them undefeated, and they're coming in banged up. They're down to the third string running back coming into this game. But to see what Manual has battled through, the adversity they battled through, it's going to be an awesome game. Especially you have the Hodge brothers for Christian Academy. They're so electrifying. Both of them will make a play. Both of them make plays every game. East Carolina's getting both of those guys, so that should be a good game on Friday night as well.
The quarterback play of that is fun to watch, and as you mentioned, that's a huge loss at running back that they have for Manual. But just to be able to watch Cole Hodge and Eli Creech going head to head, those are two of the best in the state, right? And so obviously you're seeing top tier talent right down the road from us, and that's pretty special. So I'm excited.
They're contrasting styles because Cole Hodge he's relatively my height. He can get out.
So he's tall. He's really tall. Yeah.
But Eli Creech is like 6'4". Yeah. Eli Creech is like your standard pocket passer, big guy, big arm. Cole Hodge has a big arm too, but he can also hurt you with his legs. Creech doesn't do that as much, but he can. So that's going to be a very interesting game on Friday night.
When I saw Creech play for the first time, for some reason, the first thing that came to my mind was Gardner Minshew.
There is some Gardner.
There's some Minshew there.
Looks like Jack Harlow.
A little bit. Yeah, he's talented, man. He's got a great arm. Shout out to Scott Harden. He says, "Go Tigers, beat the Weeds."
That's their thing. Go say that, beat the Weeds.
Oh man, I'm excited.
I used to hear that all the time from my former coworker who will remain nameless, even though I love him to death.
Well, it will remain nameless for the evening. If you do have any shout outs, feel free to comment. We are obviously able to be watched on YouTube, on Facebook streams. You can find us on Twitch, Twitter, pretty much every social media there's like 1,000 of them now. So the X, I still should call it the X, but feel free to comment who you're picking this week. We'll give you a shout out on the podcast.
Now putting that's the ball on high school. Now getting to the college guys, UofL's coming into this game on Saturday against Boston College. Their first home Saturday game of the season, the first home Saturday game under head coach Jeff Brom. surprisingly a double-digit favorite against the Boston College team who came back on Florida State and gave them everything they wanted. That game in Indianapolis last Saturday beat Indiana 21-14. The Cards hopped out to a 21-0 lead. Jamari Thrash in that first half was simply amazing. I'm surprised he's not getting more buzz nationally because he's putting up monstrous numbers. He was amazing in that first half. UofL moved the ball at will in that first half, which was surprising to me because Indiana's defense is so good and they've played so well, but they turned it up in the second half. And it ended up being a game.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of concerns me is the lack of consistency that you've seen on offense for UofL on this in the second half, especially. I mean, one thing that was interesting and kind of interested to hear your take on this. You saw Plummer using his legs a heck of a lot there in the second half. I mean, he's the reason truly why they were able to ice the game. It was his legs. I'm a little concerned about the passing. I truly am. I think Thrash has bailed him out quite a bit. The running game has stepped up. Jawar looks like one of the better running backs in the country, truly. The defense held its own. You can't sit there and expect the defense to, shut a team out. Even IU, who's kind of had struggles trying to figure out their quarterback going into the game. It seems like they've learned who that is now. But
Taven Jackson had a heck of a game. That onside kick, you knew it when it happened. It totally changed the whole momentum of the game. You saw that in the Super Bowl with the Saints that year. It totally changed the momentum of the game. UofL's defense is kind of hard to judge because they only gave up 14 points. That's great. They shut out Indiana in the first half. That's great. However, they gave up 2 90-plus yard drives. The goal line stand right here was at the end of a 90-plus yard drive, the second one of the second half. So that gives you cause to pause. But then, like you said, Jack Plummer at the end of this game, because this game was not over on the goal line stand. No. Jack Plummer made 2 huge runs on that drive. And shout out to the play calling because they were called runs, and especially the first one because they would have had fourth down backed up in their own end zone. So Indiana would have gotten the ball back in pretty good shape. Those runs changed the game, and they saved the game. They preserved UofL going 3-0.
I'm curious to see because obviously you have a very different team here in Boston College. Number one, I am watching the defense a little closer this time because IU had an identity crisis issue, right, getting into this game. And I think that they may have learned a little more about themselves there in the second half. But Boston College, identity crisis is not going to be a problem for them.
Castellanos is dangerous. And one of the things about him that makes me worry about UofL's defense is he's a little bit better an athlete than Taven Jackson and better than Murray State's quarterback, who both gave UofL. Well, Jackson didn't run the ball as much, but Murray State's quarterback ran a lot.
He looked good against them.
Yeah, he really looked very good. He just didn't have the receivers to be able to make plays down the field. Castellanos has that, and he can. And thank goodness Zay Flowers graduated.
No kidding.
But he can get out and he can make some plays. I mean, he made some plays against a very tough Florida State defense, who was considered to be one of the best defenses coming in the country coming into the season. Yeah. That gives you a little bit of reason to worry, and also another reason why it's weird that UofL is a double-digit favorite.
I don't know if I'm behind the double-digit favorite. I think if they can slip away with a 3-point win, they'll be happy. Because
the win's a win.
A win is a win, exactly, and especially against a team that is probably feeling a pretty emotional high. Yeah, even with the loss. I mean, like you mentioned, Castellanos has been unbelievable. He went 20 of 33, 305 yards passing, a touchdown. He threw 1 pick against a top-tier defense. And then he rushed on 16 carries, 95 yards, and a touchdown. There's an athlete.
They put up 400 yards of offense
against Florida State. So, UofL has faced a Georgia Tech team that their offense was a huge question mark heading into the year. IU had identity issues. Murray State, well, obviously, is Murray State. You're going to get what you're going to get out of that. But their quarterback got room a lot of times. See, outside of the pocket, he was able to make plays. I know that you'll look at the score and be like, oh, well, they didn't put anything up. But I'm not going to sit here and say the defense was spectacular that game, despite the score. A double-digit favorite is really hard to see in this game. It's really hard to see.
Right. But the thing, I think part of it too, Boston College came into the season not expecting to be anything. And I think they had a little bit of Castellanos is his first year as a starting quarterback. They lost Dave Flowers. They lost a lot of last year's team. So that's part of it. But I don't know how you can watch that Florida State game. Now, granted, Florida State had a lot of bad turnovers and little bonehead plays. Like, it was one of those things, they got a big lead and they kind of let the foot off the gas. And I think that's maybe what Vegas is looking at, that it was more about Florida State than Boston College. Obviously, that's what they're looking at. But like I said, a guy like Castellanos, Jeff Brom at his Monday press conference called him a more athletic Russell Wilson. And so
if that ain't a compliment, I don't know what is.
So, that lets you know that the defense is going to have their eye on him. And so it's going to be an interesting game on Saturday. I don't think it's going to be the double digit. If it's double digits, it's because Louisville maybe got a score late.
Well, and you look at what the performance was Boston College's defense had also. I mean, they held Jordan to 212 passing yards, a couple touchdowns. But overall, I mean, this is a Heisman candidate that we're talking about. And 31 points, nobody's going to ride home on that and say, oh, man, look, we held them to only 31. But it is a Florida State offense that put up way better numbers against an LSU team many thought was a top 5 team. So, early on in college football, I do think one thing that's interesting is you look at the rankings, you get caught up in the rankings a little bit. I believe firmly that Florida State is a playoff-esque team, right? I really do. And I think a lot of people will agree on that. So the fact that Boston College can stand up and go toe-to-toe with a playoff-esque team, even in their home field. I mean, UofL.
Was that red collar game.
Oh, yeah, the red bandana game. It was
the red bandana
That's
game.
right.
So there is they do have a little extra juice for that game.
That is a cool story, by the way. If you haven't ever read about the red bandana, it's 9/11, horrible incident, obviously, but one of the craziest stories you will hear is the story about the man in the red bandana. Go ahead and watch or read about that as soon as you can, because it's worth your time. But yeah, them honoring the red bandana game, that's pretty cool. But I don't know. I'm interested to watch this game. I think this, in my opinion, truly is the first measuring stick for UofL this year. I think the first 3 games, it was figure out kind of who we are, get some sort of offensive momentum, figure out if the defense has any holes in it. But at this point now, this is the first true test for them to see, okay, are we middle of the pack ACC, or are we going to be the team that, some people believe we can be, which is top end of this conference.
This game and this game against NC State next Friday.
Yeah.
Are 2 big games for them. Moving on to the Cats. They beat Akron on Saturday as expected. They did kind of look good in the second half. They looked a lot better. The offense looked like it's moving a little bit better. And they go on the road for the first time this season, and their first SEC game of the season, going to Vanderbilt, a Vanderbilt team that has improved, and a Vanderbilt team that beat them last year at Kroger Field. So this is a big game for Kentucky because the rehearsals are over with. The games against the MAC schools is over with. How that wasn't a penalty is beyond me. But there's been even though he gets out of this, and this ended up being
this was an insane play
of the year.
This was nuts.
There he is. That's the play of the year so far, in my opinion.
Yeah,
in college football. But and that's Davis going up against his former teammates and gets Vanderbilt.
I don't know how Leary got out of that, to be honest. That one made no sense to me.
Right. But we're going to find out a lot. The offensive line has blocked a little bit better so far this season. The defense has still been a little bit of a question mark. I do contend that you're going to see a better effort out of this Kentucky team now that they're getting into SEC play, because I think it's human nature, especially when you have a young team like they do. You don't get up for the Akrons and the Ball States and the Eastern Kentuckys of the world. And so I think some of this is just being young. They're going to get up for this Vanderbilt game. I think you're going to see a lot better product out of the Wildcats. And I think it's going to and plus, when you look around the SEC, if you're Kentucky, you're like, look,
you're licking your chops.
We can make some noise this year. The SEC is not the classic SEC this year, especially in the SEC East.
No kidding.
And so you can make a legitimate push right here if you're Kentucky, and you got to go in with a world of confidence that we're 3-0. Now we can show what we can do within this conference.
First road test for Kentucky. I'm curious to see if the scoreboard at Vanderbilt is going to be swinging back and forth.
Hopefully the wind is down in Nashville.
Oh, man. If you're not familiar with Vanderbilt football, they are under construction as far as, well, a lot of things are under construction, I feel like there. But their stadium is in the process of construction.
They're finally putting money into the football program.
Which is a beautiful thing.
It's nice to see.
Just not this year, because the stadium, their scoreboard, last we checked, was hanging from just a couple of cranes.
But in their defense, it's because of what they're doing in the end zones. Because, like, if you look at Lamar Jackson's last year at UofL, they're totally building they're back there behind them, and it looks like they're playing in a war-torn area.
It's awful. It's so bad.
But I say, shout out to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's starting to make the turn. They're starting to invest into the football team. But like I said, I think Kentucky goes in there and they take care of business. They win this game. And I said I think they're going to be up for this game. I think you're going to see a better product out of Kentucky going forward as they get into conference play.
Vandy is an interesting team because they had an uncharacteristic loss, of course, this past week against UNLV as well.
They put up
37 points. Yeah, they just allowed 40.
They just gave up 40.
Yeah, so that's something also to watch is, UNLV puts 40 points up against this Vandy team. Does Devin Leary have a better day than UNLV? I'm genuinely curious about that.
I think those weapons on the outside with Barryon Brown and Dane Key will get loose in this game. And I think that's going to be a problem for Vanderbilt all game. That's why I think Kentucky's going to win this game. I don't think it's going to – I haven't even seen the spread for it. I don't think it's going to be just a landslide. But I do think they win this game. And like I said, you're going to see a much better product out of the Wildcats going forward.
I think that Kentucky with a 4-0 start facing off against, well, actually, possibly it's going to be tough the following week.
That's a tough game against Missouri.
Yeah, that's a challenging one.
Because Missouri's another team that's like, looking at this thing, is like, the SEC is not what it has been.
Yeah.
We can compete in this SEC East.
Well, actually, now that I think about it, I might have been looking at the wrong thing. They have Missouri down the stretch. They have Missouri. So they have, to reiterate, they have Vanderbilt.
They have Florida.
Then they have Florida. That's how I thought it was, and I was looking at Vandy. So they actually flip-flop with Vandy on that. So they have Vanderbilt. Then they have Florida, who just came off a win against Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then you have Georgia, who looked beatable against South Carolina. And then you have Missouri, who looks really good. So, I mean, that is a tough stretch in Tennessee. So
and then they play Alabama.
They have looks like Mississippi State, then Bama. And then this is brutal.
Their schedule is brutal.
This is a brutal schedule. This is not easy, man. But they may want to appreciate this game against Vandy because it ain't gonna get any easier after this. So yeah, we'll see. This is a good challenge for them. I think between the two games, between U of L against Boston College or Kentucky Vandy, you're definitely sitting here and saying, okay, U of L could be in some trouble. I don't expect Kentucky necessarily to be in some trouble.
I don't expect them to be, but of course, I said Vandy beat them in Lexington last year.
And they struggle against EKU. So, yeah.
And real quick, the Hoosiers, they take on Akron this week.
Yeah.
I think they found something in Taven Jackson. I think they're going to have some confidence in him. It looked like even before they named him the starter that he was going to be the better option. And he played well against Louisville. Yeah. He really did. They had their lineup struggles and stuff you expect when you have a new quarterback and he's making his first start, and his first start is at Lucas Oil Stadium. But I mean, he gave them a lot of positives. He gave them a lot to be confident about, and they'll go ahead and beat Akron. And then you have their schedule going forward.
I do. And just to go off your point about the success, he went 24 of 34 for 299 yards and a touchdown. One pick, but that's a huge day for him. Was fairly efficient on the ground as well. And looking at their schedule as well. So after Akron, they go to Maryland. That's a very winnable game. And then they go to
tough, though.
Yeah, that would be fun. That's actually going to be a fun one to face Tagovailoa. Then they have the big one. They already had one of the big ones against Ohio State. They go to the Big House, though. Talk about a brutal start to your season.
Right.
My goodness.
And then you come home for Rutgers,
who's actually good.
Who's no pushover. The quarterback who's from Owensboro, Kentucky. His name's slipping my mind right now. But Rutgers is tough, and they go to Penn State. Then they come home for Wisconsin.
You got Illinois.
Michigan State's going through their issues, and then you end up in the season at Purdue in the annual battle for the old Oakland bucket. And so
That's not an awesome.
Indiana's schedule is not easy either.
No.
And so Indiana's, I'm gonna be honest, it's gonna be a struggle to make it to a bowl game with that schedule. I think Kentucky's gonna be okay. Louisville's gonna be okay bowl wise. It's gonna be interesting to see, especially going down, because like I said, that Rutgers game, there's going to be a lot riding on that.
That could be the swing for them, because if you look at it realistically right now, the game over Akron, that should be a win. Maryland, I think they win that game.
Maryland's tough.
Maryland's tough. Maryland's shown me, though. I don't know if I buy Maryland yet. I just
Indiana's defense is going to keep them in a lot of these games.
Yeah.
I don't know about against Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's going to be tough.
Against Maryland, against Rutgers, because Rutgers quarterback, while he's good, he is a freshman.
This Michigan, Rutgers, Penn State stretch is really difficult.
Yeah.
IU, though, against Wisconsin, that's a home game. That I wouldn't count them out in that. Illinois is not looking sharp.
I'm rooting for my boy Vinny Anthony in that Wisconsin.
Are you? Okay, there you go. So you're going to be jumping around a little bit. So yeah.
Luke Fickell going up there. And that's funny because Vinny Anthony, former wide receiver at Mayo, who's uncle I grew up with and was my college roommate.
That's pretty amazing.
His choices came down to Wisconsin and Cincinnati and Duke. And he chose Wisconsin. Wisconsin fires their coach, and then Luke Fickell, who was at Cincinnati at the time, takes over the job.
That's pretty wild.
And his dad told me, he's like, once Fickell got the job, Vinny was one of the first people he called.
Yeah.
Vinny's a heck of an athlete. He's a heck of a wide receiver. He scored 2 touchdowns in the state championship game as a freshman.
Really? Did he really?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I texted his uncle and told him he's already better than you 4 years in college.
Setting the precedent. I love that.
But, so, I'll be rooting for Vinny in that one. But, Indiana's schedule is very tough. Even at Purdue. Purdue's shown signs, even though they lost this past week, they've shown signs that they're recovering in the post-Brom era. So it's going to be tough, but, you never know in college football. You never know.
There may be wins right there in Michigan State, Illinois, but getting to a bowl game this year for them will not be easy.
Right, it'd be quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, let's put it that way. One last thing, too, before we head out here. The Cincinnati sports. You got the Bengals and the Reds. Let's start with Bengals.
And the Bearcats.
And the Bearcats, man.
The UofL fans are very interested in the Bearcats.
Yeah.
They lost at home.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are, especially with the good old Satterfield headed up there. So, I think when you look at what happened, first of all, with Joe Burrow.
Re-aggravated that calf injury.
May not play.
And it's funny how the story goes from, well, if they got the ball back, he'd have gone back into the game, so now he might miss this week.
Right. And it's against a decent Rams team. You got Puka Nacua, who has decided to be
one of the surprise rookies.
He's unbelievable, man. He looks like Cooper Kupp 2.0. I think he was targeted week 1 15 times. This past week, he was targeted 20 times and then 15 receptions. Like, what are these fantasy football numbers that he's putting up? So
former Tutu Atwell getting more time.
Yes.
He's finally starting to get some. He's battled through some injuries since he's been with the Rams, but Tutu Atwell's getting a lot more time for the Rams too. He's one of the funnier guys that we've had around here. Apparently, he's a great cook.
Is he really?
So he told me.
Did he tell you what he cooks?
He's like me. He gets on the grill. He likes to grill.
If he cooks like you, Kendrick, then I'm going to hand it straight to him. So I'm still dreaming of the wings that you cook, man. I was talking to somebody else today about your wings. That's how much I love your wings. Your wings are so good, man. Like, they shouldn't be that good, but they are. We'll see what happens with the Bengals situation. Joe Burrow definitely not looking healthy. I'm a little concerned because obviously as a quarterback, a key asset is to be able to push off, right? And he just doesn't seem to have that push.
And you also worry when first thing that goes to my mind when I see repeated calf injuries is I start worrying about the Achilles.
Yeah.
Calves and ankles, when they stay sore like that Achilles becomes more vulnerable. So you got to worry about that. And I'm sure that's what they're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I'm a little worried.
I'm a PhD.
This is Kendrick, the medical side of things for Kendrick. So he's a man that wears many hats. Another hat that we'll wear here is the C for the Cincinnati Reds. And we kind of stopped talking about them for a while there because, well, it didn't feel like we needed to talk about them. And
they're making the playoff push. They're a game out behind the Cubs, half game behind the Marlins. It's going to be a tough run. I mean, a game doesn't sound like that much, but the Cubs have been playing really well. The Marlins have been playing well most of the season for the Marlins. Yeah, and then the Reds have been playing well for the Reds. And so it's going to be tough to make up that game. But I mean, when you got Ellie De La Cruz, you got a chance in every game.
The schedule actually really favors them down here. And I think when you look at the win totals, a lot of people are kind of floating the number 85, 86. If you can get to 85 wins, you're probably safe. 86, you're in. Mm-hmm. And I think the Giants are off their rocker at this point. I think they're done. Miami, the rotation's not holding up well. Sandy Alcantara has an injury that's knocking them out. Right. I think the Marlins, there's not a lot of momentum there. Jake Berger just got injured. So you can almost kind of take your little pen right here and tisk, tisk, tisk. The Reds, by default, almost, it feels like, in the most Reds way possible, could wind up getting that 6th seed, but it's going to take them or the Cubs, I think.
They have to pass up the Cubs.
That's going to be tough.
The Cubs have been playing really well. Yeah. From July on, August on.
They finally hit like a tiny, tiny skid, but I mean, overall talent. I mean, the Cubs have good pitching. Justin Steele hasn't looked as sharp lately, but Cody Bellinger's still hitting the ball well. The Cubs are tough. Let's put it that way. The Reds need to get that production from Elly De La Cruz. That's a concern. Matt McClain coming back.
He's played well since coming back.
Yeah, that's huge to have him. And we'll see, man. The Hunter Renfroe and the Harrison Bader situation didn't work out well, but I'm curious to see, do the Reds have enough to make it? That's just the key.
It's going to be tough. But like we've been saying, the Reds are a year ahead of time.
They are. They are.
Schedule. So if they don't make it, if they're not able to get over the hump, it's not doom and gloom.
No.
You look at it, you got a ton of confidence heading into next season.
Right.
You've got pretty much everyone's under contract for right now. And so your trade deadline next year.
I know. I was going to say.
They may make moves next year.
For the sake of it, they need to make moves at the deadline next year. And Blake Snell, if he finds himself in a Reds jersey, Reds fans could be really stoked because that kid is legit. He's probably winning the Cy Young, and he'll be a free agent. Go after him, Reds. Make a move and go get some.
The 2 Angels.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, are you in the market for Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani? Because Ohtani now you're worried about the pitching side of things. He just got surgery this week.
That they won't say it was Tommy John, but it was Tommy John.
It was essentially Tommy John. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So I that is a concern. I think his price goes down only $80 million.
I think it's minimal because every pitcher is pretty much. I mean, it's pretty much part of the growing process. Is you have Tommy John surgery
in this day and
age. They made such a big deal about it. It's like it's just Tommy John. Every pitcher in the league has Tommy John.
I need Tommy John, and I'm not even pitching, man. Like I got my elbow things. We do have one comment. It is from Scott again, and I think you can tell Kendrick where he leans. He is picking St. X to win 38-10.
I would expect nothing less.
I'm not surprised either. Do you have an idea? We're not going to pick teams, but roughly, what would you say the spread of that game would be?
Given history, I would say the over under would probably. I'd set the over under at about 30.
Really?
30, 35.
Okay. Over under at 30, 35. I'll say. Also, you'll see probably a differential of like 3. I don't imagine much more than a field goal.
Yeah, and both of them have decent kickers. I think Trinity. I mean, St. X will be favored coming into the game. I said they just had their first loss of the season. They haven't lost to anybody in the state of Kentucky, and so I think St. X will be the favorite. I probably maybe a touchdown at the most.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious. I have no take on it yet because this is the emotion side of it too. You got to play in front of a lot of fans, a lot of distraction, as Coach Kopp said. So I'm stoked. This is a really exciting week for us.
And Dusty and I both will be out there at L&N Field for the early shows tomorrow. And we'll have all your highlights and your post-game reaction from that game and the Manual Christian Academy game on Touchdown Friday night. But for now, for Dusty.
For another evening. Another
evening. And next week we hope to have a special guest. The Wrestler Show. You haven't caught it yet.
Not yet.
The Wrestler Show on Netflix. I highly recommend it. It's great. It takes you, and it's always cool to see your hometown on a national stage like that. And you see little spots and walking around town and like, oh, that's the Highlands. And little things like that. And so The Wrestler is a great show on Netflix. I highly recommend it, and we hope to have a guest from that show in here next week.
I'll be binge watching it after we have all these games. Yeah, I got 1 week. 1 week. You guys have 1 week to watch it too.
All right. You all have a good night.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Breaking down